coming up, we are going to do something that we don't normally do, and that is get in on that speculation train for Halloween Horror Nights. From our houses in and around Orlando, Florida, this is the Universal edition of The Diz Unplugged. This is episode 254 of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. The Diz Unplugged Universal Edition is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect Universal vacation. Visit them on the web at www.dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. I'm your host, Craig Williams. Today, I am joined alongside by my co-host, Ryno.
Hello.
Hey, Ryno. How are you doing?
I'm good today. I'm fine.
Good. I'm happy for you.
I'm happy for you. I don't know why, but I am, and I'll find a reason.
Oh, I can give you lots of reasons, but I'm not going to focus on that because we have so much fun stuff to discuss today, and not the other stuff, but and we're going to get to that in just a second. But before we get to that, which of course today's discussion is HHN speculation, before we get to that, we have to give a little bit of an update. I don't believe as of the time that we are recording this show that it's an official update on Universal Orlando, but it definitely is if you live in the state of Florida, and that is now the entire state of Florida does have a stay-at-home policy in effect through the end of April. And if you remember all the way back to last week's episode that we did, we were discussing the fact that Universal had put out their policy that they were at least going to be closed through April 19th. And, well, if you kind of do the math on this one, it now appears that even though Universal, as of the time of recording this, hasn't said anything, it can only be put together that they are going to remain closed at least through the end of April as well, too. So not really much to say in that matter because, well, there just isn't. But it's a good thing for you to know if you weren't paying attention to what is happening in the state of Florida and you're only focused on what's happening in your actual state. So I don't have anything else to say about that. Ryno, do you have anything else to say about that?
Oh, no. Just, looking forward to the day that we can get back out there and do some stuff like this again. I'm sure everybody is.
I know. It really would be great if we could actually, I've never wanted to do a dining review so badly, or anything along those lines. Just not sitting here and talking about Universal and actually getting out there and doing it. And, it's how it's got to be for a little while here, but we'll get back into the swing of things. But that's a great segue into our topic today, which is Halloween Horror Nights speculation. And if you followed along with us for a couple years now, you know that we don't really get into the rumors and speculation that much. Every now and then we'll bring up a rumor when it's something that really excites us and we like the possibility, but really only on rare times have we really gone in depth on what the rumors are out there and in discussing them. And this is a time where we're definitely going to break that tradition and actually get into it, just because it's not that we're running out of topics, but it's a very pertinent topic right now because just a couple days ago, I guess, even still from when we're recording this, shortly after the last show, but before this one comes out, the great people at Horror Night Nightmares, HNNightmares, I think, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Is their official handle?
HNNightmares.
Thank you. That's I did not want to get it incorrect because they are they're the ones who put out the speculation map. So I want to make sure that they get their full credit on this. And again, Horror Night Nightmares, HN Nightmares on Twitter. They put out their HHN 30 speculation map, and it is very, very interesting to say the least. And of course, it's version 1 of the speculation map. There's always a possibility that there can be changes and adjustments to it. But it's the first one that they released, and it's very, very interesting. Some of the choices on here are so interesting that it really is warranting this entire conversation, because it's stuff that Ryno and I have already talked about before. Because while we don't necessarily get in depth on the rumors, we love sharing what we would like to see from events, and we've had many of those conversations throughout the years, whether it's talking about HHN or even talking about just the parks, what kind of attractions and such we'd like to see. And since we're knocking off some of the things that we would personally like to see on via this speculation map, I think it's definitely warranted, worth talking about. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, if we shall. And we'll just right now we're just talking about the houses that are up for speculation and what it could be. And I know I was on InsideUniversal for a little bit, another great website that we talk about and reference from time to time here. Their forums, again, are a treasure trove of information about Universal, and also a place where people love speculating. And I know some of the houses we're talking about have been confirmed on their message board, basically through riddles and series of other information reveals from some of the insiders that post over there. So there are some of these that we're going to talk about that have been pretty much officially confirmed, so that we could say, like, okay, there's a very good chance that these are in fact happening unless everything else changes. And some are, of course, are just pure speculation and up for grab, but it's still fun anyways. One of the ones I believe was undercover confirmed on InsideUniversal and also showing up on the speculation map is Beetlejuice.
Yes, thank you. I had no idea. This one caught me kind of out of left field, I feel like. I mean, not to say that I really had any idea, honestly, other than like one of these, I in the speculation map is one that I was like, yeah, that definitely makes sense. But Beetlejuice was one where I was like, oh my gosh, like that really fits in really well with that. I feel like that same type of kind of thing they did with Ghostbusters, they can do with Beetlejuice, but maybe even like bring it to like a next level sort of a thing. And I immediately, when I heard this, I was 100% in. I'm like, yes, I want to see this. I love how Beetlejuice still can be seen in the park sometimes. I think this will be the first time that we get a real nice celebration of the movie that is Beetlejuice, as opposed to like the Graveyard Review. And I just think, like, you know, I had some people I have heard, because we have friends that are also like Halloween Horror Nights, you know, purists, and our friend Ken, he was very into some of these, and Courtney was not as much. And I was like, oh, I thought you guys would have definitely been excited. We like a lot of the same things, and I've heard there's some backlash about people being like, oh, well, these aren't scary properties. And I am like, I think it was Mike Aiello who said it, or somebody said it, and that Universal, the way they approach these nowadays is that it's supposed to be that feeling when you would go over for a sleepover and have an experience like where you were watching that rated R movie that you shouldn't have, that scarred you for life. And so that's where they like pulled, like last year they pulled, you know, the Lagoon show, and having Ghostbusters, but then having this other, you know, it's like, I like that it's not just all torture, like they call it torture porn. I love that it's all not like Saw and that gross like guts hanging out and stuff like this. And Beetlejuice for me is like, I think that can be a scary house, but I think it's definitely an aesthetic that screams Halloween.
Yep. I honestly feel dumb that we haven't ever really brought up Beetlejuice in the past when it came to talking about what we would like to see, because, you know, obviously complete shoo-in for Universal, considering Beetlejuice and Universal's history. But then on top of that, too, it's just a lot of the iconography in Beetlejuice is just so like spot.
It's like creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy. You know, that Tim Burton style is very creepy, but it's distinct. It's unique. It would look perfect with black lights and really make for an interesting house on that. Plenty of room for puppetry in terms
the sandworm.
Of like and just I feel like there's just a treasure trove of imagery that can be used for Beetlejuice, and definitely the 30th anniversary of the event makes sense for a year to bring that out and put it into play. And again, I just feel dumb for not thinking about Beetlejuice as an option before, because it really is a perfect movie to use for this event.
Well, it's funny that you just said great for the anniversary. I actually, until you just said that, I didn't really kind of put the two. I even just kind of said it myself before about him having that history with the park. I didn't even think of that when I saw this house announced. I just immediately was like, yeah, it fits. And I didn't realize that's a whole nother reason why it fits, you know, in so well. And there's that other part of me too, where I'm like, ooh, merch, you know, like I'm excited to be like, I'm not sipping out of it today, but I love my like Ghostbusters mug I got there last year. And now I'm like, ooh, a Beetlejuice one's on its way, you know?
Yeah, and I think Beetlejuice has always been, you know, it's been a favorite for fans of Universal. And then even though it probably will not be open in any form on Broadway, it was supposed to be kicked out of Broadway in May, but because of all the issues that happened, you know, we don't know if it'll even have the money to come back in another theater once everything opens back up in New York. But the fact that they can then also... they can branch off of the success of the Beetlejuice name from the Broadway musical that was very, very, very popular this past year. It just, all the signs align that say Beetlejuice, a great time.
Don't say it 3 times.
To use it. I think we've already said it quite a few times, probably more than 3. So I could not be more excited for the potential of a Beetlejuice house. As much as we hated Graveyard Mashup and Graveyard Review, I feel like this could be Beetlejuice at its best at Universal.
I think what's great about it too is if they do kind of what they've been doing the last few years, where they have that that kind of, well, I guess they didn't really do it this year, but the that main entryway between Minions and Shrek, you know, where they've had like the icons of the past, you know, or like the main, you know, the hodgepodge of characters from different scare zones and houses are always kind of right there, because they make it like the area where you like, you know, take the photos and stuff like that. I think that it would be great that like you could have Beetlejuice just wisecracking walking around over there or something. You know, I think it'll be great.
It could be great, and the next house that we are discussing could also be great, and that is being called on the speculation map. It's being called Universal Monsters: The Bride. I've also seen it posted in places as Bride of Frankenstein, and so I'm not sure if the complete speculation is that this is solely on the Bride of Frankenstein, or if it is
Dracula.
Or if it's sorry.
Or if they're, I was wondering like if they're going to incorporate Dracula, because he had the brides as well. I mean, I know it's Bride of Frankenstein, but I was just thinking if they wanted to roll in some other stuff.
Exactly. I didn't know if it's just solely Bride of Frankenstein or brides as a general thought of strong female characters from any of the Universal monster movies. I'm okay with any bit of it. So anything that can bring classic Universal monsters into Halloween Horror Nights, I am completely okay with. If it is solely a Bride of Frankenstein house, I am also very much okay with that. I love Bride of Frankenstein. I thought the Bride of Frankenstein, that in last year's Monster House, the piercing screams that came from her was like one of the standout moments of that entire house.
She scared my friend so bad. Like, one of my favorite memories from this year is going through this house with my friend who gets very scared, but he like turned around to look at me, and she came out and screamed, and he screamed right back because he was so afraid. And like, I will literally just start laughing randomly thinking about it every now and then. And I just think like that scene with Frankenstein was so cool too. It lends itself to a lot of cool imagery, again, with a lot of the electricity. And if they do their own spin on it, like they were saying they were doing with Universal Monsters this last year, I think it'll be really interesting.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree too, and I'm also with you on like the electricity aspect of it. Something about that just I don't know.
You know
It
that like
makes
snapping noise that the Tesla thing makes when the electricity, like I keep thinking about that. You know, we talked about it in episodes in the past about how they do a lot of that thing where they slam the windows down because it, it breaks your nerves as you go. And so it's like a psychological thing that starts to make you more scared. And like, I think of them doing something similar with that sound of electricity snapping and cracking and it just being really interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm right there. I'm all for it. So I don't really have that much else to say really in regards to it. I'm excited. Anything? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, this is one of those properties that I feel like it was done so well last year, and if it's done really well this year, let's say they don't do another house next year for it. Like, I'd love to see the monsters just keep making their way back, though, with like a scare zone or something like that, because I love this celebration of Universal. And again, you said it for Beetlejuice. I think this is another great thing for the park for a 30th anniversary, having monsters that have such a strong tie to Universal's history being present in the park.
Yeah, and I think it would still be really cool if they could have found a way, because one of the things not on the map but we talked about last week is obviously the Invisible Man. I think that would have been maybe a little bit more perfect, even though that's more or less taking the new movie and adapting it to life versus classic monsters in that regard. I think that still could have maybe been a better fit, but I'm not going to complain if they're going to involve more of the Frankenstein movie stories in there. So I will be completely okay with it. Another house, one that you have been asking for now for definitely for a year, if not 2 years, because I can't remember when it came out, but is one of the strong rumored houses, and that's the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
I am so excited for this. You have no idea. I said it and I was like, somebody has been like, they've put a bug somewhere in the studio or in the phones or something like that, because this year it is like they were like, what will Ryno love? And I love the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina because from the second I saw the first episode, I was like, this aesthetic to me is like, I want to live in the town they're in. And I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's not Greendale or Glendale, or it's something, because it's Archie's, like the play off of Archie's town's name or whatever it is. But it's the town that's always has that Halloween aesthetic. And I think the production design in Sabrina, whether you like the show or not, is just an amazing, like a beautiful thing that is just like kind of that throwback for me to like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but on this whole other level. But I love that show. I love how it can go. Like I've actually been, I'm not done. I'm on the last episode of season 2. But because I was watching an episode every time I was at the gym, and it would be like shocking moments, scary moments, funny moments. And I'm just like, I love this property, but it's just one of those, like, I love the visual. I love so much about the visuals of it that I think this could be a great house. If they're using all the demons and stuff that they use on the show, I think it's going to be a really awesome house.
I will say, I looked it up while you were talking. It is, in fact, Greendale. So
I was right. Okay.
Greendale to the Riverdale. So you got that one right. I talked to you a lot about Sabrina. I attempted to watch it this past Halloween. I agree with you 1,000% on the aesthetic. I loved the aesthetic, which is why I sat through almost the entire first season. But in terms of the story and the writing and the acting, like I know I watch stuff that I'm assuming other people out there think is terrible. I mean, I'll even use Star Wars as an example. You know, it's not the best with that, but there was just something about Sabrina that I could not get through.
It's like a soap opera almost, you know?
Yeah, and it's just not for me. So as a show, I could not stand it. But again, like you said, the aesthetic is what's right. That was the only thing right about that show that kept me watching over and over. I like the creepy vibe. I
love her house.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be excited for this in a house because let's be real, Universal does an amazing job at trying to like transfix these stories in these houses and lead you along with it. But ultimately, what works is the aesthetics, and when the aesthetics are spot on, then it's just it makes what could be just an okay house. It can take it over the top. Like no one's sitting at home and saying that Halloween 4 is the best Halloween movie that ever came out. Yet they nailed everything right with the aesthetics of that house, and they made a house based on it more interesting than the movie itself, and that's impressive. So
Halloween 4?
Yeah. So that leads us to our next Netflix prophecy. Property. That's what I was going for. I'm an idiot.
Oh my god.
The next Netflix
is the all-defined.
The next Netflix property, one that I was hoping for, that I love, The Haunting of Hill House, which, as we've talked about, it's Mike Flanagan is going to be working on his next series that in the same exact style as this, but I am a huge, huge fan of The Haunting of Hill House itself, a show that I think, again, it has just a perfect aesthetic all the way through, and is the best horror series that I've ever watched. And almost because it's not just a straightforward horror series, but it's a dramatic series that just then has this little twist to it. That there's a
Don't say it. I haven't watched it yet. So
I know it's just a tragedy has befallen a family, but then that's where a lot of the horror comes into it, and then the fact too that there's all these ghosts and such in the background is another level on top of it all. But it's like watching this show, it just felt like it was built for an event like Halloween Horror Nights, and when I started rewatching it, I think it was somewhere around, and maybe like right around the end of Halloween season last year, I was solidified on it again. It's an amazing, amazing show, and it is my Sabrina for the comparison for you.
Two different. What do you always say? Different strokes for different folks.
Different strokes for different folks. But I know once you finally watch Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. Even if this would be one that would like fall through and never ends up happening, I've been trying to get you to watch this for 2 years now.
It's hard. Yeah, I am going to watch it. I know there is another show coming out. Like it's going to be like an anthology show in that style of like American Horror Story, where it's like the cast returns with their different people or something. Yeah. But I have heard, I don't really know much about the show because I tried not to, I don't want to spoil anything for myself, but it's like what you said about the ghosts in the background. I heard somebody saying like, oh, well, if they use all these ghosts from the backgrounds for the scares and stuff like this thing could be incredible. And I always am like, when people are like, oh, it won't be scary, I am sorry. I was legit scared when Slimer popped out in the Ghostbusters house. That scared me. The terror dog scared me every now and then. Even the killer clowns, it can be scary, but fun scary too, It doesn't have to always be just like heart attack death scary. So although Haunting of Hill House does give me that vibe that it could be heart attack scary. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, I think that eeriness that was found in like Graveyard Games without the fun aspect of it, I feel like that's a good representation of Haunting of Hill House. It's just that, and maybe it is, I'm just making that correlation because of the ghost aspect of it, but there's something there that, at least feel wise, where Graveyard Games was, I don't remember if I ended up saying that was my favorite house. It was definitely one of my top favorite houses because I felt like it hit that ghost aspect of it perfectly, where even though I didn't think there was a lot of jump scares that got me in that house, it was just creepy in general because of the idea of this could be real. And sometimes that's enough. You don't need to be gory, you don't need to be just parading people with jump scares. It can just be the idea that this concept could be real, and that's kind of chilling in itself.
I love that classic iconography usage of like haunted houses or graveyards with ghosts and stuff like that. You know, there's some sort of thing that I think that kind of brings out that fear that's in all of us. It was that confrontation of death and darkness and stuff.
That's why when we went to Knott's, one of our favorite houses was the one there where you literally had the flashlight as you were going through the house that would just start flickering off as you were going through. That one was. Yeah,
that was great. Yeah,
that was a good house. But one that I don't understand. I mean, I do understand it because I read how many posts last year about how Billie Eilish was her aesthetic is Halloween, but something I don't understand in a general sense is how it will work in the long run with this event. But it's either expected that something with the fountain show or a house will actually be Billie Eilish themed, which is just okay.
I don't get it. I mean, I could see, I guess, the fountain show more than a house, because for me, I'm not super familiar with her music. I obviously know Bad Guy, and I like it, but it's not a bop that I'm like, oh yeah, this speaks Hollow. I would never even think to. I mean, I guess it gets included in a lot of marketing anytime a movie's about being like about a bad guy, and I'm like, oh, very clever, everyone. But there's sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to butt in for a second and say, I know in terms of her music, I don't know her music at all, besides the one that you're saying.
Song.
And maybe like, yeah, I know a couple, but I know like on the one of the Apple Halloween radio channels last year, like they would play her songs, like every couple of songs in there. So somewhere along the line, people decided that she was the epitome of Halloween.
I guess I only know like the newer one, the All I Ever Wanted, or I think was the name of it, and then the Bond, the No Time to Die. That I'm just like, I think she puts out some great music, but I'm like, nothing about it to me. And that this is, again, maybe I just need to familiarize myself with it. Screams Halloween to me, but I'm gonna see what they do with it. She could be writing an original tune or something like that. So it could be interesting. I like that it's not. I like that the music necessarily won't be like heavy. It won't be like Slash or Marilyn Manson or like something like. I like the idea that they're like, well, that's not the only music that appeals to Halloween. That like there's a couple Lady Gaga songs in my Halloween playlist, because sometimes it's just about that. There's the sound and feel to it that doesn't always have to be murder and mayhem, like I keep saying. But
yeah, you're right, though. They've tried to incorporate Slash into making his own original music for the event and such before, and Alice Cooper as well too. And like Alice Cooper, I feel like you can draw a direct connection to Halloween with it, but I think that's how people feel about Billie Eilish right now. And again, it's just I should have researched more before we talked about this on the show, like watched her music videos, listened to music. I know a couple times I've seen her, like pictures of her, I've said, okay, I can understand the whole Halloween aesthetic in that too. But ultimately, the thing is, I know how popular she is, so if they can use her name to start appealing to that 15, 16, 17-year-old crowd that I feel like definitely frequents HHN Hollywood, but not to the same extent as Orlando. If they can start appealing to that in Orlando, plus all the other people they know are already coming, then they just open this event up to an even greater group than they already had before. So while it's not for me, something I'm not interested in on the outset of it, everyone's kind of in agreement right now that there is something coming with her, whether it's a house, scare zone, Lagoon shown something. So be ready for it, but it's not going to be for me. But the next one is another one from our wish list for years and years and years and years, and people are pretty confident in it. I mean, clearly, Horror Night Nightmares was confident. I know some of the people on InsideUniversal are confident too, and that's the Gremlins will, in fact, come to life.
You have no idea. I saw this, and it must have been like right after we were done recording the other show, and I was just like, I said a couple expletives out loud when I saw it because I was just so excited. Like, there's just Gremlins for me was every time I slept over at my aunt's house. That was the movie we always watched. And people who are like, but Gremlins isn't scary. I don't know what you're talking about because the second one isn't scary, but the first one, like, I've rewatched that. It's my favorite Christmas movie. I rewatch that every now, once a year probably, and I still think, like, yeah, there's parts where it gets toward the end where you're like, man, this movie really played well in the 80s where all the gremlins are in the bar and stuff like that. But like when Billy's mom is home alone and is it Spike is like in the tree and he like chokes the mom out and stabs her, and then the exploding gremlin in the microwave, like there was a lot of tension when Billy would get slashed across the chest at the YMCA. I like the whole end scene is terrifying where they're in the department store and he's trying to slice him up with the chainsaw. Like, I think it can be scary, but also I love that aesthetic of Christmas meets Halloween. I love a scary movie that takes place in the snow. And so I am just this to me, I mean, this holds a special place in my heart because I think this was like really the first like scary movie I thought was scary, but loved to watch it when I was a kid. And I had the TV version too. So I have all the amazing McDonald's Dick Tracy commercials in the middle in between watching that VHS, but I do have a DVD of it now. Yeah. But,
we know this can work based on like Krampus.
Exactly.
Because they had a lot of the same issues with that. With Krampus, you had a lot of characters. You had a lot of small characters that you had to worry about bringing to life, and having to kind of navigate that blend of Christmas and keeping it scary. And the movie is enough source material that it can work on itself. So the only thing that I feel like this will end up being, though, closer to a Ghostbusters house than a Krampus house, in the fact that I think a lot of it's going to be just like character shots where it's not necessarily the gremlins or Gizmo trying to like pop out and scare you. It's going to be more like kind of like I think about when Rick Moranis popped out in the Ghostbusters house and with Dana sitting in the background. Like, I feel like it's going to be more moments like that where it's, we're going to see the mom thrashing around in the kitchen
with the tree, with the arm. I can see that. I think there will be like a puppet of a gremlin, like by the, in the kitchen on the counter, the mom with the Christmas tree. And I think you'll see the Corey Feldman character with the slingshot. I could even see walking into the bar and seeing Phoebe Cates like scared and trying to like defend herself, and then every now and then like coming after you too. But it's I think I hope we see that scene with the pool though, where like it's got that the bubbling with the fog and like sound that's the music at that part is so good that I love that. I
could even see them having the house really start there. Like, you walk in and it starts bubbling and such. Yeah. So even though that would kind of throw off the timeline, considering the stuff that happened to the mom in the house, and even like walking into Billy's bedroom as they're starting
the attic
nest and kind of picking up from there and making the pool scene one of the very first ones. But
it could end up being like how they did not Poltergeist, Exorcist. You know what I mean? Like their interpretation of the movie. Yeah.
I mean, heck, you can even say that Poltergeist kind of did the exact same thing, just kind of pulled pieces. So I think that's how they go, regardless of it. But exciting. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about it. I don't want them to.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've wanted it for so long. Yeah. And your expectation kind of gets up there, and I'm worried that that's where it's going to be. But we'll see. We'll see. It's something very cool to look forward to.
Exactly. I completely agree. So moving on to the originals. The first one we'll talk about, Legendary Truth, Cary, Ohio. So, of course, Cary, Ohio is the setting for so much in the lore of Halloween Horror Nights. And Legendary Truth... Sorry, go on.
No, I read this completely wrong. I was like, what does Cary O mean? Where I was like, Cary O... And I was like, is it like a play on Carrie? I am an idiot. I did not know it was Ohio. Okay.
It's a little embarrassing for you, I will admit.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Cary, Ohio, mixed with Legendary Truth. I will be honest, since my experience with Halloween Horror Nights really starts in 2010, I have always been confused about Legendary Truth because it has been brought back a couple times in the past, in the past 10 years where I feel like it pops up I started in 2011, even going back on there. So I feel like it's come up where it's been like, oh, Legendary Truth. We're going to, on the final couple weeks of this event, we're going to start the Legendary Truth game. And you're going to be able to take place in that. And like, then it's something that has completely gone over my head. So I tried to read about more and more of it. And I guess the best I can get from it, and I hope other people could tell me more about it if I am still missing something, but Legendary Truth is part of a paranormal research group. And they go out and they've covered topics like Bloody Mary and other situations too with the paranormal. So really it could be, with that taking into consideration that so much in HHN history has happened in Cary, Ohio, explaining it from like a paranormal investigator standpoint of that, I feel like that could be something that definitely fits in, but that's the information they're putting out here. It makes sense to me to blend that for Halloween Horror Nights, but it's something that I don't know enough about, so I don't feel very comfortable talking more about that. But in terms of an anniversary year, trying to really do fans of the event justice, this is something that I feel like, if that's the concept, would actually do it justice. And I think I read maybe on Attractions magazine that part of their speculation on it is that this could be one of the houses that brings in icons, which I guess that could technically work in that realm too. But again, I don't know enough about it to really say firmly on that. So the next house they're speculating to is Terra Cruentus, which I did not know anything about this house. So again, I went digging on random places like the Horror Nights fandom website, their wiki, and I feel like I put enough together on it that the Terra Cruentus was that is the land that was the fictional land that they created for the event that was entitled Halloween Horror Night Tales of Terror, and that was for 2005. And this was, and I guess from what I'm reading too on this too, that the storyteller was the icon for that and told the story of this entire land of Terra Cruentus that was rolled over by this Terror Queen and was obviously spooky and grave, but completely original in that. And one of the things that came out of that year's event was the body collectors, which we saw a couple years back in the one body collector's house that was the one that was going through Shady Brook Asylum that was snowing in the beginning of the house.
Oh yeah, I love that house. Yeah.
So it's one that, I mean, I guess then that year that they did the Terra Cruentus, that was the year that it was in Islands of Adventure. So if you're talking about an anniversary year paying respect to the past year's events, then really pulling from that momentous year in Halloween Horror Nights history would make sense.
I looked up Cary, Ohio as well, and it features so prominently because one of the creators of Halloween Horror Nights was from there. So he started to use it, and then it's the caretaker was introduced there, and I know he's a big popular icon. So it's interesting, but the Terror however you say it,
Cruentus, I think.
I think that's really fascinating that you're saying that. Like, I love that all of these, I didn't even realize just from looking at them that there's these like big marquee houses that tie into the history of Universal Studios, but then also we've got these other ones that really tie into that history of the event, but you don't have to have. What I think is really cool is this is something for like diehard fans, but like someone like me who has no idea about stuff before we really started going before work was like, I just love that history, and I love that respect of that history, you know, and like I'm not going to be lost. Like it would be lost on me maybe not having done any research, but I think it's really cool that they still do it, and like somebody who's never been could experience it just for what it is and be like, this is a cool house, or you have this history thing to go through, which is awesome.
Yep, I completely agree with you on that. So moving on to the next one, it is Bedtime Stories, and this one I was. You know, of course, I did. When I don't recognize a name, I go to the Horror Nights Wiki and other websites that I know have been covering Horror Nights for years, and I try to read about it. And Bedtime Stories, there is nothing on this. So then when I did another random Google search, pulled up an Attractions magazine article and about these rumors surrounding it, and their guess was that if a Bedtime Stories style house happens, that it would either be a kind of a collage of different bedtime stories being brought to life, kind of a la Slaughter Cinema in a way.
Oh, or I thought like Scary Tales.
Yeah, or Scary Tales in that same way too, something like that, which I guess makes sense. I think they also wrote under this one that could be a place where you could throw in a lot of the icons in that way too. So I mean the concept is intriguing. However, it feels like it could be one too where if they have the name right now down Bedtime Stories as an idea for a house, I feel like this could be one where the name ends up changing as the process goes along, and then we'll find out later as it gets closer to the event, like, oh, okay, I understand how they could take that house and also kind of go with that bedtime story concept. But yeah, to me, it's a very vague in itself that it could mean a lot of stuff.
Well, I just saw the title and I assumed it was going to be like Scary Tales, because I know Scary Tales was a pretty popular house. That was from 2 years ago, right?
Yeah,
I think. And I was a big fan of that one. That one was the one where like the Wicked Witch was like taking like characters, right, from other tales and stuff, and I was like, oh, Bedtime Stories to me could be like that same idea where like maybe it's a twisted Mother Goose and she's after, you know, she's like gone murderous on all those sort of classic stories or something like that. But it definitely has that. What I love about it, you know, I said earlier about the sleepover thing, is immediately my mind just drifts to like, you know, scary stories for sleepovers, or what was the other one they just made the movie out of that we saw?
Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah, and you know, all those kind of things that our people around our age like were really exposed to before schools were like, stop reading those to kids. But so I think I always think those are cool theme, but it's like what you said, it seems very vague at the moment, but obviously all of it does, because we don't know if any of it's real, but yeah.
Exactly, yeah, it could all be fake, and none of this matters. So the final house, Dungeon of Terror, is what they are expecting, and Dungeon of Terror is the very first year when it was Fright Nights, not even Halloween Horror Nights, the only house they had was Dungeon of Terror. So the idea is that they will be revamping the original Halloween Horror Nights house for the 30th anniversary, which I think that would be really cool to, even if it's not like, you know, it's a very updated version of that first house, it would be cool to see this event at its very roots and be able to appreciate how far it's come. So
it makes me think of, I don't remember what house it was, but it was a couple years back, but we were in there was a house that had kind of like a dungeon scene in it or something, and I remember saying it had one of my favorite effects in it because it had the mirrors in the floor. And so it would look like there was like a moat, or that you were really high or stuff like, and I keep immediately my mind kind of went to that, where like dungeon, you know, obviously right away dungeon is scary, so I was already like, oh, I'm sure that one will be great. I had no idea that was the original house though, and that seems like a really, this seems, if any of this does hold up true, or even half of this feels like a really much more celebratory event in relation to the 30 years than I originally thought it was, you know.
I know. I feel like this has been the the session of saying I completely agree with you, but once again, I would have to say I completely agree with you. And I mean, that's how I have to put it. Like, on paper, assuming that all of this sticks and it's kind of the idea of it is even close to what we've been talking about here, if that happens, this sounds like a very, very intriguing event. However, if it's completely off, then I don't know. But it was very fun.
I'll be devastated if we don't get that Gremlin's house. Don't tease me like that.
I will too, because I'm now anticipating it. So I'm excited for it. So I had a lot of fun sitting here chatting with you about it. And again, to the people who made the map, were Horror Night Nightmares, HNNightmares on Twitter. So if you want to follow along with them and get their speculation on it all, of course, please do that. And any of the other places that I've mentioned along this way that I kind of used for research and coming up with this. So I think with that, that's going to do it for this episode. So if you need any extra information, of course, you can always head over to disunplug.com, home of our show notes page for this show and all the others on the Dis Unplugged podcast network. Find links to our social media channels and more. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell button so you get notified when we have new videos. Leave us comments and questions down below and hit that thumbs up. And then if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcasts, subscribe to us and leave us positive ratings and reviews if possible. So, Ryno, thank you for joining me once again on this quest that we just undertook.
Oh, thank you this was a fun conversation, like you said. I always will love talking Halloween, so I'm happy to do it.
Good. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We'll see you again next week with another. But until then, remember, we still haven't changed the name.